an entrepreneur, I'm limited to what my strengths are, but I realize my limitations really quick. One of the ways to really put things into high gear is to recognize that, but then to use that as a strength to bring on people that I see that strength in.
Thanks for being on the podcast. I have been looking forward to talking with you for quite some time because I am a fellow meathead, right? I understand beef and cattle. Had a meat market for 8 years, and I am really excited about talking with you. So if you would take a minute, introduce yourself and talk about your business as far as what it is that Plainview does.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Thanks for having me on. It's great to be here. My name is Gabe. I'm a fourth generation cattle guy in the family, and we're just really passionate about raising healthy animals and trying to innovate really with using modern technology and things available to us to try to really change the game, so to speak, with allowing our consumers to understand really what goes into their beef and how we can raise healthy beef and really do it on a scalable, repeatable process. So that's really what we're passionate about.
As I think about entrepreneurship, and I'm switching gears slightly on you here, because the show that where I find a lot of traction with people that listen, they like to hear that entrepreneurial journey. So if you don't mind, let's bridge that gap between your background in cattle and the journey that you went on to get to where you are today. Share that journey with us.
Yeah, so I have probably a little different background, but as most entrepreneurs would probably identify with, you never know the road you're going to walk until you start walking into it, and you just kind of adapt. So, but for me, I traveled. First thing I did was marry an Australian out of university. So spent almost 20 years living overseas. So I did some ministry work and missions work in the Philippines, lived there 12 and a half years, but that was a little bit different in the sense that my wife and I started a business there to support ourselves. And so we did a wind farm project, which we kind of did from the ground up, and then lived some time in Australia and did some other things there in the financing world. And so we found ourselves back here in the U.S. About 3 years ago. And when we came back after being gone for so long, we needed to find something we could put our hands into and really be passionate about. And entrepreneurship is something that's always been in my family. And so we kind of reconnected with the family roots and legacy and the cattle side of it, but felt like we could bring some of that business experience, financial experience, and other entrepreneurial experience from other projects into what we were doing with the cattle and kind of hopefully take it to the next level here. So that's really what we're trying to accomplish.
So let's kind of bridge that a little bit closer from entrepreneurship to actually launching the business. What was that like? I know for me, when I decided that I was going to open my first business, there was excitement, but there was also a lot of lack of sleep, right? That anxiety that goes with it, like, oh my gosh, here I go. Share a little bit about the thought process and the discussions that you had with your wife on that transition.
Yeah, so I think you always, you hear it said a lot, you need to find a way that you can serve your fellow humans around you and something that you're passionate about. If you have those two kind of ingredients, I think you're off to a really good start. And so I think coming back to the US, we had dabbled in a number of things. I looked at some job opportunities, and I think we felt like, there was something that was really touching us when we got back to the US, and that was we were raising young kids. We were both in this phase of life where we wanted to really raise them and in health and wellness and try to just give them the best that we can as parents. And I think one of the things we started to get really frustrated with is going to the grocery store and trying to understand what goes into the food that we eat. And So my wife coming home telling me stories, us living in a different environment overseas, and then coming back here, we kind of had a fresh perspective, and we kind of realized quickly that there's an opportunity for us to make some change and to really build a future for not only our family, but for those around us that we felt like people were really asking for. And that was help us to know what goes into the beef that we eat. And so, because we've been in the cattle business as a family, I knew that there was a lot of wisdom, a lot of things that I could really rely on there from all the people around me. But then we could take the passion and the desire to serve people and put it to good use in trying to do what we're doing with Plainview Beef.
Okay. All right. So that's I got a little bit excited when I heard that. So what I heard was that you had a knowledge base of beef and cattle in that industry, and then you had a passion for making a difference, right? And so this is the marrying of those two to start Plainview, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then to give it a third leg, background in educate in finance. So we actually did some capital raise to do start Plainview Beef and have some wonderful investors as part of what we're doing. So there's a financial background there too, with the ability to kind of start an operation that can be financially stable and scalable. So I think that's really important for a food source that can be, identifiably repeatable and transparent. So
Right. Yeah. So you need the finance, you need the background there to make sure that that there's a good foundation for a business, right? So first of all, you got to have all the key metrics and the money and everything's got to work. The math's got to work, right?
yeah, 100%. I mean, you gotta really understand, I think before you get into it and have a real firm plan. Otherwise, you just get in the middle of it and there's a lot coming at you. So you always need that foundation to look back on and say, all right, well, we're off here, but we've done a little bit better here. So we just have a real um, good, plan that we've set out, and we can follow that as things start to come at you as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Okay. This is the part of the podcast that my wife is going to wish that I hadn't talked about. So let's get back to the meat. Like, let's get back to the meat of the matter, right? So let's get back to the cows. So let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit about what makes Plainview and the cattle that you raise, what makes them different?
Yeah, so I think we got to start, and that's probably something I should have led with, as I always do this. But Plainview is not a place in the U.S., although it is. But for us, it's a way of life. So we started Plainview with the idea that we would keep everything that we do in our operation in Plainview. So we want people to be able to follow our story. We want them to understand our practices, the way our cattle are raised, and we want to try to keep it right out in front, simple and transparent for people so that they can follow along and understand. So, with that in mind, what sets our cattle apart and what differentiates us is that we don't use any synthetics, no GMO feeds, no antibiotics, steroids, or hormones in any of our cattle. And while we want to be profitable as an enterprise, the number one thing we started and what our mission is to raise the healthiest animals that we can. So we have to, in everything that we do, sometimes we need to spend, a lot more in some cases than other cattle producers, but we need to stay true to making sure we can keep everything in plain view and not cut corners. And so for us, raising our animals translates then into healthier beef for our customers and healthier product byproducts and the different things that we're able to offer in our product lines.
Yeah. So the message that I'm hearing in the background is clarity, right? So you're talking about in plain view, transparency. So that's being clear with what you do and why you're doing it and how you do it. So,
Yeah.
and then consistent. I'm hearing a consistent theme that it's all about health, right? So,
Right. Health and wellness. Yeah.
so let's go
Yep.
down that path. Here's one of the rabbit holes I promised you I was going to go down. So let's talk about the health and wellness and why this matters with what you're doing.
Yeah, so I think we're seeing a big push for whatever reason lately that people are understanding the real health benefits of beef. And so, it's been a staple in the American diet for so long. But one of the things that we're really excited about is that we're seeing some real benefit, and then taking that to another step, and seeing it in grass-fed beef specifically. And so, we have our traditional grain-fed, lot-fed cattle, which they're very much steroid hormones, non-GMO, GMO feeds, and low-cost feed rations for those animals. But we see a really big difference in the health markers and the nutritional markers, such as vitamin B12, such as omega levels in the fat, and protein levels in the meat. We see that all of those healthy things increase as the animals stay on a rich diet and green forage. And so we kind of come at it from maybe the end result of the meat, and say, what's in that meat, and then what can we do to enhance those vitamins, minerals, proteins, all of the things that we want in our diet. What can we do to increase those in the beef that we eat? And so I think we found that you do that by creating cattle feed that is rich in all of those things, and then it doesn't have all of the harmful things that we don't want, which are the synthetics, the chemicals, the toxins. And so what we're just doing is simply creating a process by which we can repeat, and then also be transparent about, and also hold ourselves accountable, because we've been able to develop a growing system that allows us to grow fresh feed every day and feed it to our animals. And so because of that, we can monitor all the inputs, and we can monitor the water, and the seed quality, and all the things that go into it. And then it allows us to be able to say to people, we don't use chemicals, we don't use pesticides in any of our growing of our feed. So I think that's pretty powerful, and it also ends up making our meat just that much healthier.
And I was listening while you were saying all that, but while you were saying that, I was reflecting on my own health, right? And the things that I do. So one of the hats that I wear is I'm a CrossFit coach. And when you go through CrossFit training, one of the first thing that they cover is nutrition. So the foundation of all fitness is nutrition based. And CrossFit has their own system as far as what you're supposed to eat, how you're supposed to eat it. And it's nuts and seeds and grains, a little fruit, not much. So there's this pyramid that they operate off of. And the foundation of that pyramid is nutrition. So when you follow that from a performance standpoint as a CrossFit athlete, there's a significant increase in your performance and your overall health, from blood pressure, heart rate, physical performance, mobility, all that. And it all goes back down to nutrition. That's where I was listening to you, but that's where my mind was going. So are you saying that the same philosophy of nutrition that maybe a CrossFit athlete might have is what you're talking about with your cattle? That's what I heard.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just a little bit of background. My wife, she's a professional athlete, played professional basketball. And, so I think both of us come from this understanding that if you can work out, you can do all the right things, but if you're eating the wrong things, you're just doing yourself a big disservice. So, that's part of our journey, and part of what we bring into today is that understanding of how important nutrition is, and not only athletes and in performance, but also in all of our everyday lives. And so I think we've all seen kind of some of the things that we're learning as a nation of Americans is we're kind of sick, and we're kind of doing ourselves a disservice with our diet. And so, what is the true cost of eating low cost, mass produced food? There's a definite cost to it. It might not be today that you'll see those issues, but certainly down the road, they start to creep in, right? And so we want to help people on that journey to say a decision today to change maybe some of the things in that diet can really make a difference for the long term.
Yeah, I run into CrossFit athletes that say, "Oh, I work out so I can eat whatever I want," right? It doesn't work like that. You cannot outrun your fork. It doesn't happen. So,
Yeah.
so the same thing with your cattle. What do you, from a health standpoint, how do you monitor their health to understand what the nutrition, how it's impacting the cattle?
Yeah, so great question. Several things that we do that are quite a bit different than other cattle producers. And there may be some out there that are they're doing this already. I mean, we're certainly looking around, studying. Other people are doing a really good job, so we don't want to seem like we're the only ones. But we're doing. We have e-collars on all of our animals, so we're tracking their movements, their behaviors, their right down to when they drink, when they eat, how much they eat, how long they lay down, how long they stand up, how long they walk. So we're really monitoring them. That also allows us to move them around our property to make sure that they're not in the same place every day. And so they're getting on healthy ground, and from the ground up, we're trying to create a healthy environment so that disease doesn't come into the equation nearly as much. And we're able to rotationally graze them throughout the property as well as feed them. And so we're able to monitor the other feed sources that we bring to them by growing it in a fully monitored environment. So it's not outdoors, it's indoors growing environment, but we just use seed, water, and time to grow that feed. And we can monitor the water and we know exactly what goes into all of that. And we know exactly what's in our environment. So we keep the pests out, we keep all the things that we don't want. And instead of putting chemicals and pesticides and synthetics on the crop to get rid of those things like we do in a traditional growing environment, we're doing it all in the front end by creating that environment for that plant to succeed. So that's how we're doing and are able to say we know what goes into our cattle because we're monitoring it all.
So are you saying that you spend a significant, or let's just say what I'm hearing is you spend a lot of time on what you're growing, how you're growing it, and the nutrition that's in the soil. Right?
Absolutely.
Am I hearing that way?
Absolutely. So we're on a regenerative farm. So we to the best that we possibly can, don't use any chemicals, pesticides, herbicides on the farm where the cattle are. It's grassland, and we're just supplement feeding them from feed sources, which we understand exactly what goes into it.
Okay, so it's a business from the ground up, right?
It has to be anymore. We're learning that in agriculture. You have to take care of your soil. It starts with the soil.
Yeah. Okay. So how, because this is a cool story to me. I can relate to this and all different, I connect to this. So how do you get that message? How do people know about this? How do they find you?
Yeah. So plainviewbeef.com. So that will be our address or where people can look us up. But we hope you can connect with us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. We try to, as much as we can, keep the story right out there in plain view so people can get little bite-sized pieces and kind of put the message together. And then we always welcome people to come out. Our cattle are in Waukene, Kansas. So if you're on that boring drive across Kansas, sorry for those people in Kansas, but if you're on that I-70 drive, we're about 2 miles off the interstate, and we have people come visit us a lot, and we love to just show them around. So that's another way.
All right. So let me take a side step. So let's say I buy into all this, which I do, and I want your beef. How do I know that the cattle that you're processing isn't just thrown into the lot, these big feed lots that you see in Kansas, and they're just in the crowd? How do I know that?
Yeah, great question. So one of the things that we've worked so hard at here at the beginning of our journey is to try to identify a processing house that could, kind of separate our animals and our beef from the others that they would process. And so what we did is we went in and we're actually partnering with a processor in Peabody, Kansas, and they're running exclusively our beef through their processing house now. And we're also able to harvest, because of that, the byproducts. So we're also going to be coming out with an organ supplement line, which would be like a multivitamin complex coming from the cattle organs that directly from our animals, not any other animals there. And all of our beef that people purchase is it's a small batch, right? So we're taking in about 5 head a week into the processing, and we take those 5 head and we fulfill the orders that we have with people right on plainviewbeef.com. So those are coming drop ship to people's doors all around the nation. And then if you're in Kansas or the local area, we might even drop it at your door ourselves. So that's kind of how it happens.
Okay. Let's talk about demand, right? Because this is the type of beef that you're talking about, especially in highly conditioned athletes. And I'm going to use CrossFit because I'm a CrossFit coach, right? Let's just say that community alone. And there's multiple communities like that. Let's say that they're like, oh, this is the greatest thing, and they're seeing the benefit out of it, and the demand goes up. What does scaling look like as you look towards the future? How do you
Yeah.
approach that?
Yeah, great question, and something that honestly we've spent probably too much time thinking about when we're trying to tackle all the things that come at you as an entrepreneur in a startup. But we went at this with the idea that if we could do this right for one head and 10 head and 1,000 head, then we could take that same process we use for that and deploy it for 10,000. So our operation is actually set up to scale quickly. That's a pretty innovative and exciting thing about what we're doing is it's just simply a capital equation. And so we basically have the land area and all the things within our control to grow our herd to about 10,000 head a year that we could harvest. So right now, we have 122 head, and from that, we could fulfill about 2,000 orders for box beef. Okay. And then that allows us to do some skincare for the tallow and then organ supplements. So about 2,000 orders from people all around the nation. But then we can then scale from there and do probably double that by the end of the year. And then we could probably do 10 times of that by the end of next year. That's within our capability as far as development, capital resource, and all of that. But obviously, we need to be successful selling the first 1,000 orders and get those filled and keep our customers happy and satisfied. And when we do that, I think by the end of the year, we can start moving towards a subscription model where we can really fulfill orders on a lot bigger scale.
Yeah, as a business coach, I run into people that don't think that far in advance. They don't think about with the end in mind, right? How does it look like at wherever the end might be, right? And having the forethought, they get excited, they have this great idea, they got all this passion, and they start it, and then they're like, now what? And you've thought about the now what?
Yeah, so I guess I'd love to take all the credit, but honestly, I have a wonderful team around me. So I've got some of the most gifted people I know in my family and outside my family that have really helped and weighed in on their area of expertise, and it's just a wonderful group to work with, and we just have a lot of strength of people that have done this over their whole business career to build projects like this and scale them. So we feel really good about it, but it's certainly not been easy.
Yeah, as we've gone through this conversation, I'm always in the back of my mind, I'm listening for some words that are emulated around trust, and I've heard that right in the talk. Clarity, of course, you named your business as Plainview. There's nothing,
Right.
that's obvious, right? So clarity. There's competency. I'm hearing that. I'm hearing connection, right? Connection with the people. And I'm also hearing character, because with character, it's all about not only the integrity of the product, but now I'm hearing integrity of a team that supports this, right?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think, as an individual, as an entrepreneur, I'm limited to what my strengths are, but I realize my limitations really quick when I look in the mirror. So one of the ways to really put things into high gear is to recognize that, but then to use that as a strength to bring on people that I see that strength in and just champion who they are and what they're all about. And so that's honestly the thing that I get the most fulfillment out of in working with Plainview is seeing my uncle that's been in the cattle business for 50, 60 years and being able to see the gift of what he's built and done over the years, but then just to have fun conversations with him about what if we do this and what if we bring this idea in here, and he's like, that'll never work, but then we have a good time doing it together and learning and growing together. And I think it's been like that through the marketing side of this and through the business development side, through the property development side, and all of the different factors that we have to think. We get experts to weigh in, and we get people that have way more experience than I do help us, to steer us, to guide us. So
Yeah, having this discussion's got me all excited. Want me to fire up the grill just thinking about all this. So if I wanted to, like today, I'm all excited and I want to go get some of your product. Can I do that? Is that something I can do now?
yeah, so it's perfect timing, Alan. We're shipping our first orders next week, so you can go right onto plainviewbeef.com. You can place an order, and right now our first 5 head aren't quite spoken for, so we could actually get you something in the mail, and it'd be there by the end of next week. So
Okay.
we got a little bit of variety options, as far as barbecue boxes and premium cut boxes, and even some variety boxes or larger quantities if you wanted to purchase, something like a half a beef or a whole beef. So all those things are right there.
Okay. So this recording is going to air later. So that means starting in May, right? May of 2025, we're going to be able to start ordering whatever we want, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. So we're going to have, exponentially more supply in May. So that's pretty good timing.
Hey, okay. All right. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation, and I wanted to really go down the whole beef and the nutrition a little bit deeper, but this concept is unique for United States. Unfortunately, it's not been that way, right? And I know we need a few more minutes to go down that path, but what you're doing is extremely rare.
Yeah, we hope so. I think we've really worked really hard at trying to identify the areas that we believe the food system or the nutritional type environment for food, which it's raised in, is really taken care of. And I just don't see too many people thinking through all the things that we're really trying to. Obviously, we're not there yet, but we're passionate and we're committed to keep it in plain view and stay true to who we are. And so, I believe we're building something special, and I think the people on our team would agree. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah. So there's another pillar of trust, commitment. Yeah, that's great. Good way to wrap this up. Yeah. Thank you for being on the show.
Awesome, Alan. Thanks for the conversation. Great to talk to you.
You bet. Thanks.